first part here, the first part of this sheet is just really informational. There's not much you can do with this. There's no like, well, there is good or bad in terms of like body fat mass, but like total body water, there's nothing you can necessarily do to improve that. So total body water is just kind of interesting. For this person, is 69.9 pounds of water in the body. So I always encourage people first thing in the morning before you drink coffee, drink water, right? Pinch of sea salt, lemon if you want. Below that we got dry lean mass. So this is how much essentially muscle you have on your body, and then for storing excess energy, total pounds of body fat, and then overall weight. All right. Dry lean mass is, it's for building muscle and strengthening bones. Then you guys come down here to muscle fat analysis. This is where it gets juicy. So you guys will see a down arrow that's below average. You'll see a dash that's at average, and then there's an up arrow that's for above average. That's for people your age and height and gender. So for weight, right, we want hopefully to be somewhere in like that average category. Skeletal muscle mass, we want that number to be as high as possible, all right? And then you guys will see body fat mass. So what you want to see here in terms of these lines is you want to see a D shape to the curve. We want skeletal muscle mass to be up as high as possible. So we want to see a D shape to the curve. You can see this person's got like a little bit of a D shaped curve. We don't want a C shaped curve, right? The more muscle you have on your body, the more food you can eat, which is nice. And also the more resilient you're going to be over time, right? As you get older, something called sarcopenia sets in and you start to lose muscle mass over time. That can be countered with strength training. But the goal is to ultimately get this middle number up as high as possible and bring these two other numbers down, all right? BMI, if you guys come below that, anybody have questions on the first part? Cool. BMI is kind of a worthless number. It's just your weight over your height. If you go to the doctor's office, a lot of times this is how they like generally like look at you. But percentage body fat, that's going to be a little bit more important. So this is subcutaneous fat. So it's not quite as good as visceral fat. Visceral fat is the dangerous fat. That's the fat that surrounds your organs. If you hear someone refer to fatty liver disease, that's someone who's accumulated a lot of fat around their liver. And it just makes the organ have to work harder to get the same effects. But for subcutaneous fat, it's a pretty good indicator of where we are. So for guys, we want guys to be somewhere between 10 and 20%, and for girls, it's between 18 and 28%. So girls, it is different. I know you guys hate that guys lose weight so fast, but part of the reason is we just carry more muscle. So the counter to that is the more muscle you can build, the easier it's going to be for you to lose body fat, and the more resilient you'll be. So, like I said, we want to try and keep those numbers in that average range, all right? And that'll give you guys something to work for if you're not in there. And a lot of times, specifically women, I find, no number looks good on the percentage body fat. Nothing, right? I've had girls register 14% body fat, which is actually unhealthy, and be disappointed by it. I'm like, you're too low, actually. I want you to eat more food. So it's okay to be somewhere between 18 and 28%. And ladies, if you start to lose your cycles, that means you're getting dangerously close to getting below that body fat percentage, and that's not what we want, all right? Maybe that's what you want. When we come down to here, segmental lean analysis, this gives us a breakdown of the muscle on each limb. You'll see a percentage point there. We want all of these numbers to be above 100%, all right? If you see more than a 6% difference in your arms, that's considered an imbalance, and you may want to add in some single arm work, right? It's bicep curls, tricep extensions, overhead press, something to counter that, because the body operates, we'll see later in the slide, you have these fascia that come across the body in these cross-body slings. So a lot of times if you're weak on one side, you can cause injury to the other side of the body, all right? We want to make sure that we're not compensating improperly. Trunk should be over 100% if you're not there. Most people that are in here have a trunk over 100%. I've seen maybe a couple people that don't. You want to just make sure that your core is nice and strong. This means you have enough strength on your core to support your body weight. And then left leg and right leg, if there's more than a 3% difference in your legs, that's considered an imbalance because your legs are so important to maintaining stability. So if you guys see that, you may want to add in some left leg work or right leg work just to kind of build that. That might be like single leg RDLs or like Bulgarian split squats, everybody's favorite. So, any questions on that portion? Cool. When you guys come down to here, this is kind of cool. So if this is your first scan, you're just going to have one plot point here. But if you've done multiple scans, you can kind of see your progress over time. And you can probably correlate that to what's going on in your life. Some people tend to put on a little body fat if they're going through a stressful time. Maybe if you took a break from the gym, you'll see a lower skeletal muscle mass. But yeah, generally this is a good way of kind of like tracking our progress over time. And then we got me over here to body fat and lean body mass control. This is going to give you a suggestion of how much body fat to lose to get to that middle number. So it'd be 15% body fat for guys or 23% body fat for girls. That'll tell you how much you need to lose in order to get to that position. And then lean body mass control, I typically don't see any numbers here, but if you're way under in terms of skeletal muscle mass, it'll give you a suggestion for how much muscle to put on. All right. Lean body mass, this is a cool number. So you'll see for this person it was 140.9 pounds. That's essentially like how much muscle they have on their body minus body fat. All right. So your goal for protein intake on the other sheet, when we get to this portion, that is your goal, right? 140 grams for this particular person. So whatever that number is you guys see there, if you hit your protein macro, that's the number. All right. And I can pass some pens around if you guys want to write that in your macro sheet next. When you guys come down to here to basal metabolic rate, this is a cool number. This is how many calories you burn if you're just laying in bed staring at the ceiling all day. So this is just to maintain your aliveness. All right. If you're chronically eating under this number, right? This is what I see a lot of. This is why we have protein macros in there for the gym, and why it's so important is because if you're chronically under your need through your basal metabolic rate, you'll slow your metabolism down. The human body is really good at keeping us alive, right? So if you think about it from a survival standpoint, if we're out in nature and there's not an abundance of food, well, muscle is very costly. It takes a lot of calories and protein intake to maintain your muscle mass. So if your body perceives there's not enough food in the environment, it will shed muscle, right, and add body fat. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm like overweight, and I'm like, well, how much protein are you getting? And they're like, I don't know, it's like probably 100 grams for the day. And most people should be shooting for like 140, or for this person 140 or 120 or whatever it is. And then factor in age as well. As you get older, you do not process protein as well. So you need to actually eat more protein as you get older, not less. The goal, even if your goal is to lose weight, chances are on your macro sheet, which we'll go over next, your calorie count will still be above this number, right? It'll be about like 300 or 400 calories above this number because hopefully you're not laying in bed staring at the ceiling all day. If you're here, you're probably working out. If you're at home staring at the ceiling all day in bed, let me know. We can talk about progression. Any other questions on this stuff? Cool. Excellent. Let's go over the macro sheet next. So this is just a general guideline for suggested goals here. So we have weight loss as a priority at the top. We have maintain weight, improve strength and performance, and then we have weight gain, muscle gain. So depending on where your goals are, some people are trying to put on a lot of muscle, a bulking cycle, if you will. If you're just trying to maintain, improve strength and performance, it's going to give you a suggestion there, and then weight loss is a priority. Protein. Remember that we talked about on the other sheet. This number is your lean body mass times 1.2. All right. So as long as you hit whatever that lean body mass number is, anybody need a pen to write that number in? No? All right. So make sure you're shooting for whatever that lower number is. I think for Josh it was like 146 grams, so that's kind of what we're shooting for there. Up to that second number. If you eat more protein than that, typically you just, it's a little bit harder on your kidneys and you just kind of pee it out. So excess protein typically turns into carbohydrates as well, or is processed by the body as carbohydrates. Carbohydrates will be below that, and then fats below that, all right, in terms of grams and how many calories that gives you. Everybody's a little bit different here depending on your genetic background. If you're Japanese by descent, right, you're used to eating a lot of vegetarian type foods and rice and things like that. If you're more of a European descent, it's a lot more like meat and potatoes kinds of things. If you were an Inuit or an Alaskan, it would be a lot more like protein and fat. Your body typically processes based on where your genetics heritage comes from. Right? So some of you guys might be more carb tolerant, some of you guys might be more fat tolerant. All right? You can kind of adjust these numbers, but it's not a one-for-one adjustment. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. All right? That's why it's so dangerous to sit at your couch at night with a jar of peanuts or something, because a serving of fat is like your thumb, right? Versus protein, which is like the palm of your hand, versus carbs, which is your fist. Right, so think about how many nuts that is. Not very many, right? Like 12 almonds, I think, is like a serving, right? So who eats like 12 almonds? It's like having one skin, right? You're gonna eat the whole thing. So just be careful with your fats. All right, fats are things like seeds, nuts, cheese, dairy, cottage cheese. These things carry a lot of fat, butter, coconut oil. All right, so just be mindful of that as you guys start to eat. And I recommend this app called Chronometer right next to it. That's an easy way to track your food. If you guys eat similar foods, you can put those things in as recipes. So if you have the same protein shake every day, you can put all those ingredients in and then just add it as a recipe so you don't have to go and type in like 3 eggs, 2 scoops of protein. All right, so any questions on this? Sweet. Cool. So welcome. Another one, the 18th. Should be super exciting. We got some fun things here. I wanted to start off and talk about myself a little bit because I realize that I don't really explain myself very much. You guys know me as a CrossFit coach, and that's about it. So, lifelong athlete, soccer and lacrosse player growing up, lacrosse in college. When I got out, I wanted to find something to keep me in shape. I did P90X for 90 days, got way too skinny, and my buddy told me about CrossFit training, and I've been doing that since 2008, 2009. So it's been a hot minute. That's me with hair. You guys don't believe me? I used to have hair. My little brother, and that's my dog Rico. And this is the gym when we first opened, which is kind of fun. It looks a little bit different now than it did back then. But yeah, I've experimented a lot on myself over the years. Really interested in health in terms of all aspects of that. Yeah, I have a wide range of interests, and hopefully I can pass on some of that information to you guys. What we're talking about today is really just kind of like an offering of things that have really impacted me in terms of what's moved the needle, right? I like to do things that I can feel a real difference, and I try and bring those things into the Life Challenge. But I am by no means perfect. I have all my own flaws, so do not think that I'm just standing up here with a little halo around my head and I'm a perfected model of what you guys should do. But these are just things you can kind of play around with. So the mental framework, the why we're going through this, I find this kind of training to be really beneficial, the training we do in classes, because it covers a wide variety of things, right? We run, we bike, we row, we kick up upside down, we do heavy weights. And what I find with that kind of training is it whittles you down into the best form to do a multitude of different things, all right? And the way I view these challenges is what can we do outside of the gym that has a similar effect, right? What practices can we do that make you more resilient overall and maybe more well-rounded, maybe more tolerable as a husband or wife or member of society? How do we focus on our health in such a way for 30 days to establish a new baseline, right? You walk out into the grocery store as a perfect example and watch what people are putting into their carts. Most people have no idea what it feels to be really clean and healthy and mentally okay, right? You're walking around with a baseline of feeling like shit and you don't know anything else, right? So the goal for these challenges is to see if we can really clean things up for 30 days. What is your new baseline? And that's why it's so important to track these things. You'll see on the spreadsheet I'm going to send out to you guys, there's a spot for mood on there as well, 1 through 5. So you guys can go through each day and kind of see where your mood is over time as well, as you move through this. We'll be doing this in teams also, and that'll help with accountability and hopefully a little bit of camaraderie as well. All right, if you don't have a teammate, I usually try and partner people up that are in similar classes together just so you guys kind of have a knowing of each other already. But reach out to your teammate at the beginning, talk about your goals, talk about the things that you're hoping to accomplish, and then ask each other, right? Help me stay accountable. Can we keep in contact? Some people meet up for brunch or lunch throughout the challenge. So try and find some camaraderie in there because it helps. So 30 days, we got a bunch of habits to track across those 30 days. There's 3 main categories: move well, eat well, think well. All right. Each one will have a variety of different challenges in there. The think well challenge is the biggest because that's what most people are suffering with, is usually mental sides of things. Making sure that you're recovering, making sure you're having downtime. The move well will have about 3, and then the eat well has, I think, 3 or 4. All right. So really focusing on the mental aspect of things as well. My advice for you guys on this challenge is to pick 3 or 4 things. If this is your 4th or 5th challenge and you've really nailed the meditation and breath work, but maybe food's a little out of whack, maybe that's the thing you want to really focus on. Maybe your food is like dialed in, but you sleep like shit. You know, try and find like 3 or 4 things, and you'll actually get more points in being consistent with those 3 or 4 things than if you're sporadic with like the 15 different things. All right, so really try and like dial in what you're going to focus on, rather than like I'll meditate on Monday and then I'll meditate on the Monday before the challenge ends. Right, it's not going to accrue you a lot of points. And try and be as open-minded as you can. I've got some weird things that I like to throw into these challenges. So if you find yourself super resistant, that's okay. Maybe that's not the habit for you for this challenge, right? Maybe that's going to be 2 or 3 challenges. We'll have bonus weekly challenges on as well. Typically, there'll be like 20 to 30 minute extra challenges that I'll throw in. Last time we did like a vision board. This time I'm going to do a wheel of it's like Wheel of Life, I think is what it's called, to kind of vary and rate different aspects of your life and maybe where it can use some improvement. The t-shirt tank design, the t-shirts, we will have t-shirts or tanks if you guys like the design. It's an extra $20 for it this time, just because we're supplying the creatine for you guys as well this time. So if you guys decide, everybody should have put their name, I think Lily's the only one, name and email address on t-shirt or tank size. Move well. So we'll start to get into some of these categories. The move well category, because we have Murph coming up, we got 10 minutes of push-up or pull-up work. I'm going to send you guys a PDF that's going to give you guys a breakdown and suggestion for exercise based on your level. So we'll have like beginner, intermediate, advanced for push-ups and pull-ups, and it'll give you guys some rep schemes and things to go through and try that. So you get 2 points if you do 10 minutes of that work, 2 points for 10 minutes of extra myofascial release. That's like foam rolling, softball rolling, the same stuff we typically do in the class where we're laying on the ground. So 10 minutes of that gets you 2 points. And then 3 points for class attendance. If you guys come to class, if you're traveling, you guys are welcome to substitute in an hour of exercise. You guys know how classes feel, so if you're doing the equivalent and you're on vacation, I'll let you guys do that as well. That's not meant to be like all the time, right? I don't necessarily want you guys working out like 4 or 5 days a week in here and then also hammering out an extra hour of exercise on Saturday and Sunday. You do not get to have 7 days of exercise, right? So let's limit to that to what we would normally do in the gym, 3 to 5 days. The other thing that I forgot to mention too, as far as the points go, Brian actually helped me build this in. You get more points for consistency, right? So you get 1 point day 1, you get 2 points for that. On day 2, you get 4 points for that. So it bumps you up to 6. You do that again, you get more points. You get more points the more consistent you are throughout the week. I felt that was super important just because consistency is what matters, right? You come to the gym once a week, it's not going to do shit for you. You start hitting like 3 or 4 days a week, that's going to make a big difference, right? Same thing for like meditation, sleeping, right? Fascia. So excuse me on my slides because I have a lot of writing in case you fussed at me about having a lot of writing, but it's how I keep track rather than hold notes. So your fascia system runs all through your body. It actually runs on the outside of your muscles, and I learned this also. It actually runs inside the muscles and little tubulars as well. And you guys can see how these fascia systems are set up across the body. You'll even see in the middle there these like cross-body slings, which is why like bird dogs and things like that or dead bugs are really good for strengthening that system. It's also really interesting because it also regulates your emotional body as well, right? So your fascia a lot of times will get stuck on your muscles. That's a good way to like loosen them up is to foam roll or do softball rolling. But you have these thoughts trigger emotions, and that all those emotions run through your fascia system, and it dumps hormones into your muscles based on how you're feeling. So if you're constantly walking around depressed, your body is just sending chemical signals to your whole system, and that's what is the effect is having on your body. So that's a lot of times when people like start crying in yoga class, right? Because you're actually, you store these emotions in your fascial system. And when you do like long stretches and stuff like that, it will release that, and that's why people will cry. Sometimes you'll see people cry in workouts as well. Sometimes for that reason, sometimes for different reasons. But it's not just a physical structure, right? We want to try and get out of this mindset of everything being like just a physical structure. There's a lot that moves through there. So emotional tension storage. There's a mind-body connection as well. Even just your posture and emotions. Have you ever heard the thing where they talk about if you're depressed, just start smiling and your mood will like typically elevate? Same idea here. If your posture is like this is a defeated position. you've ever like yelled at a small child, right? They immediately go into like shame, right? Very small, right? We want to work ourselves and loosen up our whole fascia system so we're a little bit more open. All right. Big thing for doing fascia release, pain reduction, right? If you start to loosen yourself up, it's going to reduce your level of pain, improve mobility and flexibility. If we can loosen up that fascia system, right, we're going to get more range of motion out of our muscles. Stress and tension relief. I'd really recommend you guys getting a softball or a foam roller, and at night just lay on your back and just roll your neck back and forth, right? It's a huge stress relief. Think about how you feel after you go to get a massage, right? Very relaxed and loosened up. You can just, it's hard to give yourself or get your partner to give you a massage every night, right? So this is a way of giving yourself a little massage. When we're doing this, it's 10 minutes as well, all right? 5 ways to administer this. So we talked about foam rolling. You can pause on tender spots for maybe 20 to 30 seconds if you get yourself a softball or lacrosse ball. Lacrosse balls are really good for the bottom of the feet. They're kind of a small surface area, so sometimes it's a little bit more like digging, right? You can think about a lacrosse ball as like a scalpel if you're in a street fight, and the foam roller being like a baseball bat, right? A little bit more of a blunt instrument versus fine-tuned. Softball somewhere in the middle, maybe a billy club, all right? Softballs are really good for like rolling out your hamstrings and just laying on the ground, rolling out. Foam rollers are a little more general for like upper back, things like that. I'm also going to send you guys a PDF with some suggestions on what to do here as well. So if you have tight hips, it's going to give you some suggestions for that versus like tight traps or tight shoulders. All right. The eat well category, everybody's favorite here. So we got hydration. You guys get a point for drinking half your body weight in ounces of water each day. All right. So for me, it's usually about 100. So 3 of these plus a little bit is important. Make sure as you guys are drinking your water, you're also adding a pinch of sea salt, particularly as we get into the summer months. Whenever you finish a workout, right, and your shirt dries, you can see that like line of salt, right? So you're getting salt out of your body. It's super important you bring those minerals back into the body. All right, so sea salt's really good. If you guys don't have like a good quality sea salt, Baja Gold is really good. I just heard that the mineral, what's the word I'm looking for? Mineral content. Yes, content. Baja Gold is really good. So just like a pinch, you don't like dump a bunch of salt in there, but just a pinch, and every time you fill up your thermos, just put like a little pinch in there. You get 1 point for 5 to 10 milligrams of creatine. We'll talk a little bit about what creatine does for you. I'm providing the creatine, so if you haven't gotten yours, there's a box here with creatine. Make sure you grab one. If you already have creatine, we've ordered 10 more, so just use your creatine for the first few days, and then I'll have the rest of them here. We had like 5 or 6 people buy creatine before the challenge started. So, protein intake. Make sure you get 2 points for hitting your protein macro each day. Remember, that's the lower number that's on your in-body number, up to the number that's on the macro sheet. And then clean eating. You get 2 points for 3 servings of fruit and vegetables, and then 3 points for flawless clean eating. Flawless clean eating means no sugar, no artificial ingredients, right? Meat, veggies, fruits and seeds, or fruits, nuts and seeds. Keep it simple. If it goes bad, it's good to eat. If it doesn't go bad, don't eat it, right? Think middle of the aisle versus outside.
So like you do fasting usually during the challenge, right? Is that kind of clean eating or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you guys do your fast, we typically do a 1 to 3 day water only fast. You get points for flawless clean eating because you didn't eat anything. And you get points for hitting your protein macro that day because your protein macro is 0. All right. Good question. Creatine. Creatine supplementation. This has been a well-studied supplement. They studied it for many years. It's one of the safest supplements to take. You find creatine in red meat, fish, poultry, trace amounts of mineral in eggs, but it helps produce more power per push, right? It increases your mitochondrial function and allows for more ATP generation as you're pushing, right? So let's think of bench press. If I can push harder, I'm tearing the muscle fibers more. And it helps with recovery as well, so you guys will see hopefully an increase in your overall strength gains. It's really interesting for cognitive function and mood support. I did not realize this, but at higher doses, it is a really good nootropic, right? It really helps your brain function. And so I've been playing around with this. So instead of taking 5 grams, I've been upping it to like 10, 15 grams. And there's like I said, I like to do things that move the needle. There's a noticeable difference in mood, which I find to be quite interesting. There's some suggestion of whether or not to load creatine. I've heard that you don't have to load it, but if you guys want to experience that mood enhancement, I'd maybe play around with it. So maybe for the first like 4 or 5 days, instead of just doing 5 milligrams, which is typically just a little scoop, that's 5 milligrams, right? So maybe try 3 or 4 of those for a few days and just see how you feel. Might notice it. I will tell you, what's that?
You just mix it with water.
I mix it with water, and I typically do one of the element packs. I just mix that all together, so I get my salt and my creatine. You will put on weight, all right? It is mostly water weight, so just be mindful of that when you guys start the challenge and you start taking creatine. You might feel a little more swole, which some of you might love and some of you might hate. So if you're noticing a lot of like, maybe you're doing that like loading phase, right? After maybe the 4 or 5 days of doing like the 15, 20 milligrams, maybe bring it down, all right? Make sure you're drinking plenty of water because you're drinking them or you're eating that much creatine. You want to make sure that you have enough water so it's not too hard on your kidneys. Very well researched, very safe. This was really interesting in terms of creatine use for women. So premenopausal and postmenopausal women saw a 20 to 25% increase in their 1 rep max on leg press after 10 weeks. And then it's huge benefits in terms of overall mood. So a 56% decrease in depression. So that's something to kind of play around with. The loading phase was 20 grams a day, not milligrams, 20 grams a day. So that would be 4 little scoops. The maintenance was 5 days, 5 grams a day for 3 or 4 weeks after that. Yeah. Play around with this, see if it feels all right for you guys. It's an experiment, right? That's the whole point of this thing. And then I put up a little graph here as well. So creatine users saw more than 50% or roughly a 50% more strength gains compared to non-users by week 12. So you guys can see the top blue line is people that were using creatine versus the people who weren't. So hopefully you guys see a little increase in your low bar back squat since that's the cycle we're on this time. And just making sure that you guys are getting into the gym. It's not going to do you any good to take creatine and then come to the gym once a week. All right. The protein, right? That's a big one. There's a reason we put the protein macro as part of the point categories here. Like I mentioned earlier, sarcopenia sets in where you lose muscle over time as you get older, which is very well countered by strength improvements, right? You really don't see a huge drop in muscle mass until you're over the age of 70. But that's the point of getting in here, is to build that habit so you continue to strength train as you get older. Unfortunately, we have to keep doing it. I know. Hopefully you guys are having enough fun here, so it's fun to do that as well. Anabolic resistance, so as you get older, right, you need more protein to stimulate muscle growth. Protein turnover, slower protein synthesis, and aging body demands higher intake. You guys, when you finish working out, that window for about 30 minutes to an hour after you work out is very important. That's when your muscles, think about them as like sponges, right? Everything's been squeezed out and they're super thirsty, all right? So protein synthesis window is about an hour after you work out. If you can, try and get as much protein as you can in that hour window, all right? It's good for bone health. It'll help with osteoporosis. It'll support your immunity, which can weaken with age. There's less nutrient absorption as you get older, so make sure you're getting more protein in that way. If healing and recovery is an issue for you, if you're constantly sore and achy, right, there's some level of that's just naturally going to come with strength training. But if it's like chronic like pain, I would make sure you're eating enough protein. You might see a lot of that stuff dissipate. Stacking your protein. This is super helpful, and this is helpful with all the tips. Stacking your habits, meaning doing multiple habits at once, is going to be easier than you doing that across time. Same thing with protein intake. Try and stack your protein. So if you're having a regular protein shake, but maybe you're only doing protein and water, you're just taking in a lot of like liquid, right, and kind of filling yourself up. So instead of doing protein and water, maybe throw in some raw eggs, throw in some spinach, throw in some Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Try and stack it so it's actually, you're getting a lot of nutrients and you're getting probiotics if you're using yogurt or cottage cheese. Yeah, raw eggs. I've probably eaten like 10,000 raw eggs in my life. You're not going to get, well, I haven't gotten sick from it. So results may vary, I should say. But I haven't noticed a huge issue with that at all. Just make sure you guys are getting good quality eggs. If you've ever cracked like farm raised eggs, like they're kind of like a pale, gross, like yellow. And if you guys crack like a really good egg, right, it's going to be like a way darker, like orangey kind of look. So make sure you guys get good, high quality eggs. You are what you eat, and you are what those animals eat, right? So if those animals are eating just corn and whatever else they give to it, you're now taking that in as well. I'm going to send you guys a PDF also with snack recommendations for protein, because this is typically one of the hardest categories for people to hit. All right. Fruits and veggies, we want to make sure we're eating within season, right? We evolved outside, so you weren't going to be eating pineapples in the middle of winter. Same thing goes, we got some good fruits and vegetables. These are all fruits and vegetables that are in season for Charleston, South Carolina now, right? So when you guys go to the grocery stores, I'll send out a separate list for this as well. Make sure you guys are trying to stick to these versus ones that you might find in the grocery store year round that aren't in season, all right? Sugar. We're reducing and eliminating our sugar intake. Sugar is neurotoxic. Excessive sugar spikes your dopamine levels, which mimics addiction, impairs memory, focus, and mood regulation. They're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, right? So we want to try and avoid that as best as possible. Actually, I didn't realize this, but eating sugar lowers your immune function for hours after you eat it, right? So you can think about this with your children as well now. It disrupts white blood cell function, it reduces immunity for hours, it accumulates in your bone marrow, terrifying. And increases your vulnerability to infections and chronic diseases. When I was reading about this and I was thinking about young kids, right? They're at school all day, a lot of times there's candy or cupcakes and these things, and it's no wonder your kids come home sick super often, right? On top of that, their immune systems aren't ready for it. But this might help if you're noticing your kids are chronically sick and they're eating a lot of like Skittles, or if you're noticing yourself get sick. This is the reduction of neutrophils, which I didn't know what those were until I was putting this presentation together. But your neutrophils are like your immune system's first responders. They rush to infections, attack microbes, release chemical signals to call in immune cells. And this is the graph of what your neutrophils do after you consume sugar, right? Drop by 50%, they stay low from 50% for a few hours, and then they gradually rise, but it takes 5 hours after you eat a highly sugary meal for your immune system to bounce back. It's a long time. So think about that as you guys are moving through this. Alcohol, ooh, tough one. Not a lot of nice things to say about alcohol, unfortunately. It is a poison. And when you ingest it, your body turns it into another poison, which is also not easy on your body. It really disrupts sleep a lot. And this is a tough one also. When your body is digesting food, or if it's digesting alcohol, does not know it's asleep, right? So let's say you have 3 or 4 drinks at 7 o'clock at night. It's going to take an hour to process each one of those drinks. And for that time, let's say you're in bed by 8, and it's going to take 2 or 3 hours, right, to process that alcohol. You're only getting like 6 hours of sleep. Also, you've introduced a poison into your life, right, or into your body. So the unfortunate thing about this is a lot of times people view alcohol as a way to relax, right? It gives you this sense that you're relaxing and you're kind of at peace. Unfortunately, the body's not processing it that way. So there is like a rebound effect to that versus some alternative ways of relaxing that are maybe a little bit healthier. So same thing, alcohol is also processed as sugar. So all those things we were just talking about with your immune function, same thing is happening and worse. It affects memory, focus, mood the next day, increases your heart rate and blood pressure at night. It's also diuretics. That's why you get up and have to pee like 16 times in the middle of the night. So it'll also disrupt your natural melatonin and growth hormone release. It's incredibly dehydrating to you as well. So I don't know if you guys have ever spent any time around people who are alcoholics, but typically they get like real stringy legs. Everything gets very like stiff and tight. We want to try and avoid that, especially for things like your spine as well. You think about all your discs, you're dehydrating all your spinal disc as well. So a lot of times that people end up with back issues as a result of that. Cold plunge. You get 2 points for 1 to 3 minutes of cold plunge. Everybody's favorite. This will promote your recovery, reduce your soreness, improves dopamine levels. I'm going to get into that as well. Boost your immune system. We're going to talk about breath work ahead of the cold plunge to help with the stressful side of this thing. Some of you guys have done sauna before. People handle sauna typically way better because it's kind of like the frog in boiling water, right? You slowly get hot over time, and by the end, you're like a little bit uncomfortable. With the cold plunge, it's immediate discomfort, right? There's no like, there's no frog in boiling water. It's frog in hot ass water, and your whole body's instinct is to like get out, right? So what you're learning in that is you're learning how to mitigate your stress response by breathing, by calming, by staying in the present moment. It's usually when you get up into the mind that you start to lose a little bit at that time. We're going to go over the cold plunge a little bit more, but you get 2 points for 7+ hours of sleep, 2 points for 10 minutes of sun or grounding during midday. We'll talk about that as well. You get 2 points for 5 minutes of journaling either in the morning before bedtime, and I'll give you guys we'll talk about that as well. 2 points for 10 minutes of breath work. Typically what I did in the past was you got 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening of meditation and breath work, and you got points for that. I realized that that's kind of hard for people who are new to this, so we eliminated one of those, and it's just 10 minutes of breath work. So if you just do the breath work without the meditation, you get 2 points for that as well. All right, and then there'll be another spot for if you want to do a secondary. That's the 20 points or 20 minutes of IM meditation. We'll talk about that as well, and then you get 2 points for 20 minutes of creative play. Creative play can take a bunch of different forms, right? You want to stand up and dance for 20 minutes. You want to draw for 20 minutes. You want to play an instrument for 20 minutes. Something where you're outputting, right? Too much of our world today is consumed, right? I'm consuming, and there's not enough self-expression. So there's something in there that wants to come out. Figure out what it is that you want to do, whatever your medium is. All right? This is a good time to kind of play around with those things. Sleep well. We got some suggestions for, and there's a separate PDF I'll send you guys for this, but just some suggestions for how to get better night's sleep. Making sure you're reducing the temperature of your room at night. Making sure you've got everything blacked out. The human body has a lot of photoreceptors on it, and they did an experiment one time where they had people in a pitch black room, and they just shined a laser on the back of their knee. Obviously, they couldn't see it, and that would wake people up, right? So any light in your room, your body is responding to it in some ways. Try and get your cell phones away from you. You don't really want to have electrical outlets that are plugged in near your sleeping arrangement, right? You're an electrical being, so you're picking up on electrical fields that are around you. If you can turn your Wi-Fi off at night too, I'd highly recommend that. Making sure that you have a good nighttime routine, whether that's breath work or meditation or journaling, something to kind of like slow yourself down. If you guys have blue light blocking glasses, highly recommend that as well. Candlelight in the evening is really good, just to make sure you're kind of naturally winding down as the sun is going down. Same thing goes for food, right? Imagine that we were living outside in a tribe. There's not a lot of light, so you're probably not waking up at 9 o'clock at night and getting a snack. You're in the dark, right? So think about that. We are so well lit in our house that we can go get a snack at 9 and it doesn't feel weird. But if you were outside, it would be very bizarre, right? Imagine eating food in the dark. It's not like a normal thing. So making sure you guys aren't eating a lot. Same thing that we talked about with alcohol. If you're eating a big meal right before bed, your body is spending time digesting. So same thing. Your body doesn't know it's supposed to be asleep because it's busy digesting your food. So your recovery is not going to be quite as good. Your sleep's not going to be quite as deep. Your body temperature, if you typically wake up with like night sweats, typically that's a stress response. You got a lot of stress going on in your life, or it's because you're eating, right? So it's naturally going to increase. It's called the thermogenic effect of food. Your body will increase temperature as you're digesting. All right. So, like I said, I'll send you guys a video or a PDF with some suggestions for that stuff. Circadian clock, mitochondrial function. So this goes hand in hand with sunlight exposure and the cold plunge, right? When you get into the cold plunge, your whole body releases what's called cold shock proteins that go through and they do a lot of healing in terms of inflammation. It also you get kind of excited, right? That's your mitochondrial function increasing. So people get out and they're like shivering, you know. It's not as bad this time of year because at least it's warm outside. But it'll improve your metabolic health because it increases that ATP production we're talking about, which is the force you can put in per lift. Really good for anti-inflammatory effects. If you guys have achy joints, like I said, this thing moves the needle, right? For me, it moves the needle big time. Sauning after you work out, cold plunging in the morning. right? You want to reduce. I was just used to being sore as hell for 5-6 days a week, and I would only get relief from that if I stopped exercising for a few days. With that stuff, it makes a huge difference. We'll talk a little bit about the mood factors of that as well. Morning sunlight, your eye is a clock, right? The human eye is a beautifully created clock, and your hormones operate off of that clock. So if you wake up in the morning, one of the first things you should do is go outside. These lights are bright as hell in here, right? They're maybe like 800 to 1,000 lumens, which is how they measure light exposure. When you go outside, even on the cloudiest day, it's 10,000, right? It's a way big difference from normal, all right? Or just being inside all day. So please try and go outside. Midday sun is what we recommended for this. So obviously always get up in the morning and see if you can go outside, walk your dog, whatever you need to do. But midday sun is really good for vitamin D as well. So I want you guys to try and get outside. And this is one of those habit stackings. You get points for sunlight and grounding, right? So grounding is going and putting your feet on the earth, right? Bare feet, right? We want to be connected to the earth. Yeah, the cold exposure ice bath for 1 to 3 minutes. If it's your first couple times doing this, 1 minute is really good. Your panic instinct will kick in at for about 30 seconds. So when you first get in, your whole body's gonna go, nope, 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 nope. Breathe out slowly, exhale. Your exhale is your breath of relaxation. So if you can focus on your breath and just calm down, it makes a huge difference, right? And it'll dissipate after about 30 seconds and you'll be able to tolerate it, all right? Some of you a minute. The goal is to kind of work your way up to about 11 to 12 minutes per week. Not at once, 11 to 12 minutes per week, all right? Cold plunge and dopamine. This is super interesting. So dopamine is what like the reward center of your brain, right? Think about like going outside and building something, right? That's kind of a natural dopamine release. We get a lot of dopamine, unfortunately, through our phones, right? Constant scrolling. They design those apps just like they would for a slot machine in a casino, right? Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna get. Oh, this is a video of a, puppy. Oh, beautiful. Oh, there's a video of a strength trainer. Oh, good. I'll keep going. I'll keep going. It's a natural dopamine release, and unfortunately, you don't have like unlimited stores of that, right? So the goal is to find natural ways to increase dopamine, whether that's completing a project or doing a cold plunge. And that'll help with your mood and emotional regulation as well. You can think about addiction. Sugar spikes your dopamine as well. That's why a lot of people like get bored of scrolling on your phone and they're like, oh, go to the fridge, what's in here? It's just like this constant chasing after this dopamine reward system. So cold plunge will enhance your attention and focus. It'll increase your working memory as well. It aids in decision making, impulse control, and planning. Overstimulation, like I said, is like your phone, like cocaine usage, right? These things like overload your system, and then it totally messes up your reward system in terms of long-term planning, right? Same thing, like I said, sugar does the exact same thing. They did experiments with this also, which is kind of interesting in terms of cocaine versus cold plunge, which I found interesting. Hopefully you guys don't have a cocaine habit I need to worry about. But you guys can see at 0 minutes, we had 100% baseline dopamine. 15 minutes after cold plunge exposure, that jumps up to 150%. 60 minutes up to 200% is a steady increase. And then up to a couple hours to 4 or 5 hours afterwards, you see a 250% spike, and then it gradually declines over time, right? But it still remains elevated, right? So I'm not on cocaine, I'm on cold plunges, right? That's the goal, all right? With cocaine, 0 minutes was 100% of baseline. At 9 minutes, you're at 250%. And then you see a crash, 75% below baseline, 50%, 75%, right? So we see it does not help. This is a much healthier alternative. So this is also a reason, if you guys have been around people who cold plunge a lot, it becomes a little bit addictive, especially if you have kind of an addictive personality. It's also really interesting because if you're ever suicidal, one of the first things they tell you to do is stick your face in ice water. Because it snaps you out of your mind. Typically, if you're depressed, it's a lot of mind things going on. And you cannot help but be very present when you get in cold water. So it's a really good way of like bringing yourself into the present moment. Grounding, getting your bare feet on the earth, super important. Most of us spend our time in tennis shoes. We're actually not touching the ground at all. There's a incredible, this thing, contact with the Earth's electron neutralizes free radicals in your body and helps reduce inflammation. They also make grounding bed sheets and grounding pillowcases. They're not very expensive, and you can just plug them into the wall. I actually have a grounding mat that goes underneath my top layer. You plug it into the grounding section of an outlet, the little O at the bottom where the mouth is, and that'll help you reduce your inflammation at night as well. Really good documentaries about grounding as well. If you guys are curious about that, I can share that as well. Lowers cortisol levels, enhances relaxation of mood. It enhances your blood flow as well, supporting cardiovascular health. They've done experiments where they looked at blood flow of people who weren't grounded, and the red blood cells get into these like kind of congealed forms. They kind of like stick together almost. And then after grounding, you see these nice like separated red blood cells, and they kind of flow a lot better. So it's actually highly effective. And you guys, like I said, stack your habits. Go outside, get your sunlight, and also take your shoes off. The morning dew is really good. The same way we have you guys wipe your hands and feet down with the in-body scan. The morning dew in the morning will help with that as well. Yeah. Cool. Breath work. This is one of the things that I think is most challenging for people. When you go to sit down to do breath work, I fight with this every day. There seems like there's a million things better than sitting down and breathing heavy. And then also the same thing when you're in class, you're like, well, I'm already doing like a lot of breath work anyway. But this is different. When you sit down and you consciously do breath work versus a class, right? In class, I'm expending a lot of energy, right, as I move through things. When I'm laying down doing breath, well, I'm also taking in energy right through my breathing, right? When I sit down or lay down and do breath work, there's no energy expenditure. So and I don't want you to think about it as just oxygen either. You're bringing in a lot of energy. You know, think of like right? You're gonna get a lot out of that. I'll take you guys through one if you want, real quick. Yeah, let's do it. So we'll do a little like this, and then you're gonna exhale, and you're gonna press your back. And this is a heating exercise, so you'll notice your body kind of gets hot, right? Five more. Last one. Yeah, right? A little increase in energy. You can kind of close your eyes and feel like the energy kind of moving around your body. You might feel a little lightheaded, right? We're getting a lot of energy dissipate as we move through that. Then if we want to do a breath that calms us down, we'll do a little double inhale, exhale. So inhale, pause, inhale the rest. They call us the sniff, sniff, poo breath. Sniff, sniff. Poo. Two more. Poo. One more. Right, isn't that cool? Right? So if you find yourself in a stressful situation, sniff, sniff, poo breath, right? Before you're about to go in and fight with one of your kids or your spouse or whatever, take 3 or 4 of those, it'll really calm you down, right? Stressful situation at work, do that. Wake up in the morning, not very energized, I feel like crap. I saw the other day someone said, like, breathe like gods, right? Think about, like, taking in as much energy as you can, all right? Super important for just overall vitality. There's not one piece of your body that's not affected by a higher oxygen saturation. People sleep in hyperbaric chambers to accomplish the same thing. This has moved the needle in a huge way, not only in terms of things like allergy relief. I used to get terrible allergies here. I almost never get allergies anymore after I've been doing this consistently. Your sinus cavities take up about the same size as your fists. If you were to take your fist and kind of bring it into your head, right, that's how much space your sinus cavities take up, right? When you don't use your nose and your respiratory system the way you're supposed to, it all shrinks, right? So you can think about it like your sinus is supposed to be a tube like this, and because you don't practice a lot of breath work, your tube gets smaller and smaller, right? So as things like allergies, pollen, dog hair, whatever, go in there, right? It doesn't take very much mucus to close that sinus cavity down, right? As you practice breath work, and you'll feel this in your head, which is kind of cool, you'll feel all those tunnels, essentially, get bigger. And so it becomes easier and easier to breathe, which is lovely, because you do it 26,000 times a day. And your things like allergies. You don't have to take Zyrtec anymore or Claritin. And you just notice overall mood improves, pain reduction, reduces inflammation, helps with detoxification, reduces allergies, and sorry, Jackson, it improves sex as well. All right. It helps sensitize everything, right? And it's also really good for control when you get into that act by learning how to breathe. If you get a little too excited, slow breaths, make it last a little bit longer, make it feel a little bit better, right? So keep that in mind, and let me know. Let me know. So same idea here, coherence versus discoherence, right? When you guys come into here in class, we're blasting loud music, the weights are slamming, right? Coherence is like, you can think about like a smooth wave, right? Or a laser beam, right? A laser beam is coherent light, which is why you can see a nice long laser beam if you're doing it in like fog or something, versus something like a light bulb, right? It's kind of like more spread out and kind of all over the place. We're trying to build coherence in our system, so we do the workout, right? What do we do immediately afterwards? Rest, right? Everybody lie down, put your backs on the ground, take some deep breaths. We're trying to slow everything down and build some coherence in our system. What you guys will see over here, we can kind of see a little visual representation of incoherence versus coherence, right? If we're stressed out, we're adding a lot of sugar, alcohol into our body, inflammation, loud noises, right? Stored trauma, all these things create discoherence in our system, right? And by doing things in a healthy manner, we can clean out that energetic system, right? Breath work is also really good for trauma release. So if you have a lot of emotional dysregulation, doing breath work like that, where you're bringing in a lot of energy, allows some of these like blocked energy channels to dissipate, right? So that's why it's really helpful if you do it consistently over time. Or if you come to, like Brian Ronenberg does these long breathwork sessions, a lot of times people will cry or they'll laugh hysterically or they'll have weird visuals. You're bringing in all kinds of energy into the system and it's allowing the system to release, right? Think of like a clear energy, or like a river flowing through you of energy versus a river that's having to go around all your childhood traumas or that thing your coworker sent to you. Yeah. The more coherent we can be too, the more coherent people around us are, right? If you're generally at ease, it typically makes other people at ease as well, all right? This is where we get a little into a different space, all right? I did a 8-day silent retreat when I was in Brazil, and it was all fasting. And the purpose behind that is I've always wanted to do that, and it really just calms your whole body down. You can kind of do some deep diving and exploring. In the absence of food, right, you're not as grounded to the earth. You're not as material. So you naturally become a little bit more, we'll call it spirit, right, depending on where your religious viewpoints are. But you kind of naturally tap into these like outer layers and deeper states of meditation. And when I was doing that practice, this woman gave me a book called The I Am. It's called The First and Last Chapter. The name of it is the Nazareth Gita, and I'll send you guys a PDF if you want to look through that. But the way I have this challenge organized is that it's going to send you it's a quote from this guru who would tell you to look at what I am is, right? What is your internal awareness? Kind of like turning your attention back on itself. And then the author will give like a little synopsis of what he thinks the guru meant, and then it'll give you a journal prompt about this, all right? So the explanation of this, I like to use the I, right? What is our experience of I amness? What is your experience of being alive, right? One of the things that we all share is a black pupil, right? I always find this very interesting in terms of like racism. Like how can anybody be racist, right? Everybody's pupils are black. It is the unifying factor in all humans, right? We all share this awareness of I am alive, right? And that's the thing that doesn't change, right? As you guys get older, right, what do you always say? Oh, I still feel like I'm 18, you know? There's some piece of you in there that is not changeable and not movable, and it's always there, right? And we share that with everybody else, okay? The meanness of you, me, right, can be represented by your iris, right? Everybody's iris is totally different. We all have different color irises, and that can be the filter through which you view the world, right? Your meanness is, I'm Mary, I'm Joey, right? I'm a boy, I'm a business owner, right? I had good parents, I had bad parents, I had dogs growing up. Like, do you have this filter through which you view the world based on all of your experiences, right? That is the me side of you. The goal of this type of meditation is to pull yourself out of your meanness, right? Because your meanness feels constricted. right? The I am, this presence, is not constricted by anything. It's always there, right? No matter if you're happy or sad. And if I can pull myself into that level of awareness, it allows for kind of separation, right? The same way meditation gives you separation from the shit that's happening in your life, and you can kind of just observe it, right? The moment depression and things hurt or happen is when you're so identified with what is happening in your life, right? I've got like a little graph here that kind of helps to explain this a little bit. So your I amness can be described as like your oneness, that thing you share with everybody. It can be represented by the dot in the middle of the circle, right? It's this oneness, it's this silence, it's open, it's your attention, right? What I put my attention on in the world, right? And then your me-ness is all the categories that have been assigned to you, right? That's the world telling you who you are. You're a girl, so you should behave this way. You're a guy, so you should behave this way. You're this job, right? You're a nurse, right? You're a teacher. These are all very like constrictive type labels that you put on yourself, and over time you agree to more and more of these things, right? Oh, I'm athletic. I'm, white. I'm a good person, right? But these labels, these things all change with time, right? I was a soccer player, right? I don't play soccer anymore. That label is gone, so it doesn't do me any good to identify as a soccer player. That's not what I'm doing anymore. So we're trying to pull ourselves back into this so that we don't get so feeling of constriction right here. All right. The other thing you'll see in this in these posts is there's discussion of when this kicks on. Right. Your me-ness, your ego self, kicks on at 3 years old. Right. Does anybody remember what happened before you were 3? No. There was no subject-object duality. Kids have and this is kind of cool too, because psychologists have discovered this now, that kids have a lantern perspective of consciousness. They believe they are everything, right? Especially when they're real little and they're mothers, right? The mother and the son share a nervous system, and when the son comes out of the mom or the daughter, that's why it feels good, so good for kids to be with their mother, because it allows them to calm. The reason they do this for men as well. What did they do when you have a child, Joey? What's the first thing they do? Skin contact, right? You're helping your child build its nervous system around you, all right? And then around 3, your ego self kicks on. Suddenly, they've been telling you you're Tommy, right? Until you're 3, and all of a sudden, Tommy-ness kicks in. Oh, I'm Tommy now, right? And then these labels start to come in. I use Tommy here, but Tommy wasn't my example here, right? So I'm a boy, I'm a son, I'm cute, I'm righty, I'm maybe athletic, I'm handsome. As we move through time, we get more and more of these labels attached to us. And what happens around 40? What's a pretty common thing with people as they hit their 40s and 50s? A midlife crisis, right? A midlife crisis. I quit my job. I'm out. I'm getting divorced, right? I'm moving to Hawaii, whatever. It's an effort to get rid of all these like labels, right? I feel too constricted. This I am presence, this me who's everything, right, has now been constricted to such a small box it makes me incredibly depressed, right? So the goal, you might still go through a midlife crisis, but the goal is to bring yourself into this so you're not so focused on this side of things. This makes life much easier. This makes life very constricted, all right? So that's kind of the point. So you guys might see the G word in those passages. I hope you don't get too caught up in that. It's kind of like a unifying principle of all people, which is really what I'm interested in, right? What brings unity to people? When you're dealing with somebody who's problematic, right? Think about it. They're the same thing I am. They're that general awareness, but their filter got messed up, right? Their parents did not love them. They're angry because their job sucks, right? And that allows you to be a little bit more gracious with other people. If you were them and you were filtering life through their vision, through their iris, you would behave the exact same way, right? And that's why it's good to look at people with compassion and understand that they're doing the best they can. It's just unfortunate that that's the filter through which they're looking at the world. And the same thing with people who are incredibly pleasant to be around. Same thing. Oh, this person, had a great filter. Their parents loved them, or they've overcome these obstacles, and you can kind of relate to them in a better way there as well. All right. So, the goal of this, like I said, is to pull yourself out of your me-ness and hopefully allow for that kind of like open sense of yourself, right? And if you dig into that more and more in meditation and breath work, There are things revealed in that space. There are understandings that come naturally through exploring that space. You can think about when we look at the night sky, right? You're looking, this will trip you out, right? You're looking into infinity, right? We don't know how far that goes. It goes off infinitely, which is hard for people to process. When you close your eyes and you go into that I amness, you're looking at infinity the other direction. Outside infinity, inside infinity. There are all kinds of things in there that are very interesting to explore. Most people think I'm just sitting here in silence. You're training your focus, you're training awareness to look back at itself, right? That's why the breath is important. One singular focus, and you can train your awareness that way, so you're not scattering your energy across multiple different things. Hopefully that makes sense. Journaling, we got journaling 5 minutes before you go to bed or 5 minutes upon waking, depending on what your goal is. Before bed is really good for stress relief, emotional processing. It'll help you sleep because you're writing all those things down that are bothering you. So if you're someone who's lays in bed all day and all of a sudden it's like, what's on the grocery list for tomorrow? What are the 400 things I need to accomplish? Write it down in a journal, right? It'll allow you to kind of like dissipate those things. If you're doing it for in the morning, it's good for goal setting, creativity. You can start your day with an intention, right? Also super important. So if you want to boost your productivity, try journaling 5 minutes in the morning. Dream journaling is also an excellent way to start in the morning. We mentioned the weekly challenges. Like I said, they'll be a little bit longer duration. There's a separate box when you guys get your spreadsheet. There's like a box for Monday through Sunday, and on the right side you'll see weekly challenges. There'll be 2 challenges per week. They're just extra points. So make sure you guys are staying on top of the tracking, right? Do you guys remember what you did 2 days ago or what you ate 2 days ago? Probably not. So I really was trying to get this down so I could send you a Google form every day and just have those boxes to highlight, but I couldn't figure out the Google Apps script. So if any of you guys are wizards at Google Apps, you guys can help me out with that. But unfortunately for now, we're still gonna have to go in and just mark the spreadsheet. So maybe set a little timer on your phone at night to go off at like 8 or 9 o'clock and go in there and just check those boxes. Otherwise you won't get points for you or your team. And like I said, you're not gonna remember what you ate 2 days afterwards. So try and stay on those things daily. Focus on that consistency. Dare to be a little bit different than you were last year. One of the things that's a consequence of changing your behaviors is there's a lot of resistance for people around you, right? The same label things we were talking about, people view you that way. Oh, Mary's this and that and this. And now, right, or Sean goes out and he likes to have a few drinks. And now Sean's not drinking anymore. And that whole mental perception of how I thought of Sean to be now bothers me. And what happens when you stop drinking? Right? All your friends are like, come on, just one, just get in there, have a little one, have a little fun. So when you shift, don't be surprised if the people around you are a little annoyed. It's okay. They'll get over it. All right. And that's it. Yeah. This will be on the back of the shirts. I'm the fearless truth, unshaken by the storm. Like I said, how do we get ourselves calm, in shape, in a space where whatever's happening in the world around you does not bother you, right? You're that calm presence at the center of everything, right? That's defining your center. That's the goal, right? Any questions? So that's all. Good question. Yeah, so typically it's better to cold plunge in the morning. You want to give yourself enough time to warm up before you come to class. Like I wouldn't cold plunge like 8:55 and then run into the 9 o'clock class. Maybe like 8:50, so you can at least like come in and like move around a little bit. Or 6 hours after you train. Do not want to cold plunge directly after strength training. Your body, training is damage, right? It's muscle damage. You're tearing your muscle fibers. If you go immediately get into cold water, it blocks the immune system's response to sending protein, and that protein synthesis window closes, right? So you're basically like stopping yourself from getting any kind of like strength gain. After conditioning type workouts, if we're doing like that 30-minute AMRAP we did last week, that's an okay workout to go do cold plunge right afterwards because you're not doing nearly as much muscle damage. It's more of a cardiovascular deal. Good question. Anything else? Cool. Awesome, guys. Well, there's more people doing this challenge that are here. I think we have like 15 or 16 people.